What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Unscripted Live here on the Elite Sports and Entertainment Network. I'm your host and producer, Logan Landers, and join me to talk some NCAA Week 9 game predictions. As always, Jay McLovin. What's up, my brother?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. As you know, for all of us, man, basketball season has started. So now it's a whole nother realm of craziness. So
Yes, it is. We're tucking it in for baseball. Obviously, we're going to have some coverage, of course, the rest of the postseason. But our teams are back with that kind of football and basketball. So, ready for that. And, of course, stat guy Dustin Reese. What's up, my friend?
I don't know yet. It's raining. Tomorrow it's supposed to rain. Then we're supposed to get snow.
We'll see if his internet's going to be able to hold it. We'll see. Well, guys, let's get into it. We got a 5-game parlay, 5-game slate here with NCAA week number 9. So let's get right into it. Oklahoma taking on Kansas. Jay, I'll let you start things off. Who do you got winning this one?
Yeah, honestly, man, Oklahoma at number 6 versus Kansas. I think this is kind of a no-brainer for me, man. Honestly, it's going to be Oklahoma for a lot of reasons. When you look at Gabriel and the quarterback, or you look at Oklahoma's quarterback versus Kansas quarterback, I just don't even think it's kind of close, man. You're looking at over 2,000 yards versus 913, 19 touchdowns and 3 picks to 9 touchdowns and 2 picks. Obviously, Kansas isn't a big throw-in team. They're more of a running team. So I expect them to try to control the clock. I expect them to try to be successful on the run. I fully expect Oklahoma to be able to stuff the run. As with all one-dimensional teams, Logan's, they either come out strong or they come out, struggling. And I fully expect Kansas to come out struggling and not have an answer beyond that. I think, like I said, I think it's a battle of the air versus run. Oklahoma's going to want to air it out. Obviously, Kansas is not going to want to air it out. And I think it's just a game, like I said earlier, of who can control the clock. When you look at the terms of yardage, they're all about the same, right? Yards given for Oklahoma is 496 to 442 at Kansas. And then you look at the defensive side of it, and you got 359 given up to 396 for Kansas. So on paper, the stats look pretty close until you look at the quarterback approach. And then you see the disparity. Now, when you look at the running back side of it, you got Major at 78 carries for 308 and a touch to Neal's 90 carries at 659 and 6 touchdowns. So clearly, like I said earlier, Kansas is strictly mostly a running team that does pass every now and again. When you look at the competition that they faced with Oklahoma, obviously the big win over Texas was huge for them. And of course, and that's really kind of all they really had. I mean, you can look at Cincinnati, Tulsa, whatever, nobody cares. But then when you look at the Kansas side of life, they did lose to Oklahoma State at a close one possession, 39-32. But then they also lost to Texas at 40-14. So Texas blew them out. So I think Texas obviously is a passing team. Obviously, they do have a run game over there as well with Brooks. But if Kansas can't handle Texas, what makes you think they're going to handle Oklahoma? So for those reasons, I see another blowout, much like the Texas game, and I'm gonna go 35-7, honestly.
All right,
favor of Oklahoma.
Dustin, do you have a similar result?
This would be a much better game if Jalen Daniel was the quarterback for Kansas as opposed to Jason Bean, who's kind of stepped in and he's played well enough, but he's still no Jalen Daniel. There's a reason why Kansas was 6-0 at one point with him as the starter because he was putting up great numbers, and he was putting up great numbers this season before he got hurt. Dylan Gabriel's just been on a different level this year. He's, I think, now kind of cemented himself in that Heisman conversation, give or take how the season ends for him, but I think he's still going to end up in the Final Four before all is said and done. And after a down year last year for Oklahoma, Brent Venable has really gotten this team back to the Oklahoma of old in just his second year since taking over that program. One thing they have done a lot better with this season as opposed to seasons in the past is they're playing defense. That is something that Oklahoma has never been known for, and that's something that was always one of the knacks on the Big 12 was no matter who came out of that conference, they never played any defense. But now you have a team in Oklahoma that's playing defense where if they can continue to run the table, which realistically, looking at the rest of their schedule, you have that Oklahoma State game coming up, but outside of that, they do have a great shot to run the table, get to the Big 12 championship.
Did he freeze up?
And potentially get into the Big 12 playoff, win that, and potentially get into the college football playoff. But I think Kansas is going to put up a little bit of a fight in this one, mainly because they have to. They're still on that window where one more win gets them bowl eligible, but they need to get that win. But I think Oklahoma wins. I think it's going to be like a 37-24 type of game.
Yeah, I think I'm agreeing with both of you. I think Oklahoma will take the win in this one. They've looked really good, and Dustin, you brought up a good point. I mean, this is one of the few times in recent memory, right, that we're seeing the Sooners play pretty solid defense all in all. And as for Kansas, like you said, they were doing really good. They were looking good, but unfortunately, with the quarterback injury they're dealing with, it's going to be slim pickings. They're going to have to play pretty much a perfect ball game if they want to win this one. For that reason, though, I'm going to have to go with the Sooners taking the win in this one. Give me Oklahoma 35 and give me Kansas 14. All right, up next, what is this from the world's largest cocktail party, I believe is what they call it here down south. Neutral site game, Florida, Georgia, in Jacksonville. So not really a home game for either of these teams. They meet at a neutral location. As we know, Georgia was off last week, and let's see if the Florida Gators can pull off an upset. Dustin, I'll let you start things off. Who's taking this one?
This, I think, has the potential to be an upset. And the reason why I say that is not having Brock Bowers is going to be critical for Georgia in this one. Carson Beck is not Stetson Bennett. And I think Stetson Bennett could have maybe adjusted to not having Brock Bowers a lot easier than what Carson Beck's going to be able to do, because Brock Bowers has been Carson Beck's favorite target all year. And now you don't have a guy that's arguably going to be a top 5 pick when he enters the NFL draft because he's the best tight end, and you could put him right up there with Marvin Harrison Jr. as probably the top 2 pass catchers in the country. And that's really going to kind of put this offense in a difficult spot, especially the first half against Florida, where Florida is very quietly a 5-2 team, and they've done it after kind of getting off to a slow start. They got Graham Mertz as a transfer quarterback from Wisconsin, who he's been up and down, but he's really starting to play pretty well. And I think that's kind of what a lot of people wanted to see, was how Graham Mertz was going to handle the SEC as opposed to how he played in the Big Ten. And I think right now he's showing that you give him the right talent around the kid, he is going to be a good quarterback because he was a 4-star recruit for a reason. I do think Georgia wins, but it's not going to be anything easy at this point. I think Georgia's going to win 31-27. That loss of Brock Bowers, I really think is going to hurt them the next couple weeks.
All right, close ball game. Jay McLovin, do you have a similar result, my friend?
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, I definitely have Georgia. Everybody knows if you live in South Georgia, this is like one of the biggest games, right? I got friends of mine who half are Georgia and half are Florida, and it can get really intense, and I love every minute of it. But yeah, it's crazy, man. That Brock Bowers not being there, that's going to be huge for Georgia. Like Stat Guy brought up just a minute ago, that's a big part of their air game. And not having that could be a stumbling block for them against this Florida team. Beck is a good quarterback, as we all know, at a little over 2,000 yards, 12 touch, 4 pick. But like I said, that could be hugely affected by Bowers unless next man up comes into effect like it did last game, honestly. Mertz is a little bit, pretty good conservative guy at 18, a little over almost 1,900 yards at 12-2. So, other than just the yardage factor, these guys are pretty much, almost on the same level in terms of stats. And then you look at the running backs, and they're almost about the same too in terms of that, right? 80, 460, and 6 for Edwards at Georgia, and then you got Florida's Johnson Jr., 85 and 438. These guys are pretty damn close. So it really kind of comes down to number one, whose defense is going to show up in this game, number one, and can Georgia overcome the loss of Bowers? And I think maybe they do escape Florida. But, the thing about Georgia, I'm almost really leaning towards Florida in this game, only because of the schedule that Georgia has played. I mean, really, it's almost as soft as Charmin. They've almost got a toilet paper schedule. So even though they're winning and their numbers look great and all, is it almost kind of inflated a little bit to a certain point, which kind of skews our perceptions of things. Again, you got 509 on terms of total offense to 421, 262 on defense to 312. But how much of those numbers are skewed? Georgia, like I said, played soft. Florida took out Texas, or Florida took on Texas or Tennessee. Excuse me, I'm saying Texas, Tennessee. I can't remember all right. Florida took out Tennessee 29-16, and and we know that Georgia has had trouble with a team like Tennessee. I think Georgia's wide receiver Lovett needs to continue to step up and play some Bowers. But at the end of the day, I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to go Florida, and I think they get the upset over that weak-ass schedule of Georgia. And I'm going to say it's going to be a close game. It ain't going to be a blowout by any means. But I'm going to say 35 to 30. Favorite of Florida.
All right, Jay with the upset here. So for me, I think that Florida is, like you mentioned, Dustin, kind of a sleeper team in terms of how well they have played this year and their record. And for Georgia, as we know, number one team in the nation, been there for, I believe, 19 straight weeks. So we know the run they've been on here lately. But Brock Bowers is going to be out for a few weeks. We're not sure exactly how many. I think it was about 3 to 6, something like that. So nothing too crazy, but still for the last half of the season, you're going to want him back as soon as you can. You mentioned, Jay, you're going to have to see a heavy dose of Dominic Lovett, Rosemary Jack-Saint, as well as, Ra Thomas, Dominic Lovett, Oscar Delp, the backup tight end who will be filling in for Brock Bowers while he's out. So it'll be interesting. But, yeah, they're going to have to rely heavy on Carson Beck and his ability as a quarterback to get this win. And also their defense, which we know how good their defense has been for quite some time now. So going to have to really rely on the defense and for, Carson Beck to really get you out of some tough situations. But I think Florida does have a really good team. All in all, when you look at it top to bottom, they're pretty solid. But I don't know. I can't go against Georgia. So I'm going to go with the Bulldogs to win this one. Dude, if I say Florida will win, I will have probably 5 people outside of my window just with bats in hand. Because I live an hour from Athens, so it's sacrilegious pretty much.
Don't let that peer pressure get you. Speak your truth.
Oh no, I do think Georgia will win. Don't get it wrong. I swear there's nothing pointed at me right now. Blink twice, but. I think that the Bulldogs will win. Give me a final score in this one. Give me Georgia 30 and give me Florida 23. Close ball game, and I think it's going to be a good one this upcoming weekend. All right, Oregon and Utah. Jay McLovin, back to you. Who's taking this one?
Yeah, this is a really good game. Outside of that Georgia-Florida game, I really think this is my second favorite game of the week. Just for honestly what's happened so far with these teams. You got number 8 Oregon going against number 13 Utah, and Utah played pretty damn well against that USC team. So for those reasons, man, you got Bo Nix going up against Barnes, and it's not even a close one. Again, this is just another one where Utah's kind of more of a run team, not so much of a passing team. You got 2,000 yards and 19-1 to 633, 4-3. So Barnes doesn't have exactly the most amazing stat line, let's just say, to say the least. Against about the 6-1 teams, you turn your attention over to the running side of Oregon at Irving at 87 at 649. 7 touchdowns is crazy to 87. The same amount of carries, but not even close to the same yardage or touchdowns, and 450 in a touch. So really, this will go Oregon's way because they are just completely dominating right now over this team. But I will say the one bright spot of Utah is they do have a good defense, and they've only given up just under 300, whereas Oregon has given up just a little over 300. But I don't think that's going to be anywhere near the factor when you look at the offense at 553 of Oregon to 345 of Utah. I don't really think that's going to have a whole lot of weight there. Oregon's loss 36-33 to Washington was still a pretty big thing in my mind, even though that was Penix Jr. over there. So you really can't hold too much weight against them on that. Utah, they did beat USC 34-32. That was the big-time Caleb, quote-unquote, Williams. But they also lost to Oregon State 21-7. So these guys could be up 1 minute against great teams and down the next. So I think Utah is just a little bit up and down for me to go with them on that one. I think both teams do limit the run for under 100 yards, which is impressive. But I think it comes down to the air game, and I think that does go Oregon's way. So I think a lack of consistency on Utah's side and just a really good air game on Oregon's side has me going with Oregon, and I'm going to go 28-20.
All right, Dustin, what's your thoughts?
So 8 versus 13 in this one. So you kind of have to say this is probably the game of the week, I would think. 8 versus 13. I don't think there's any other real high-class matchups this week because it's Penn State and Michigan next week, not this week. But you have to wonder where this Utah team would be if Cam Rising was here. Yes, I get that they're still 6-1, but their quarterback right now, Bryson Barnes, is a far cry from what Cam Rising is. And a lot of the things that Utah's done is they've been winning basically on their defense because they've only averaged 345 yards a game as opposed to Oregon averaging 553. And if you look at the games that Utah's won, yes, they beat Weber State 31-7, but that's Weber State, an FCS program, so you should be able to kick the crap out of them. But you beat UCLA 14-7, not really an offensive explosion there. You lost at Oregon State 21-7. Again, nothing really special offensively there. Last 2 weeks, you put up 34 against California and 34 against USC, but both of those teams have two of the worst defenses in the Pac-12, so we really don't know much about this Utah offense yet without Cam Rising, and I think this is the week that you're going to see what that Utah offense can do because Oregon's defense is number 2 in the Pac-12, and Utah's defense is number 1 in the Pac-12.
Well said.
Obviously, it's going to come down to, I think, a battle of the quarterbacks, and Bo Nix at this point is having the best year he's ever had in college. He's a much better quarterback than what Bryson Barnes is, and he's even a much better quarterback than what Cam Rising is, but at least Cam Rising has that competitive nature that can keep things tight if things go south, but I think Oregon wins going away in this one. I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game just because of the defenses, but I think Oregon wins 27-14. I just don't think Utah's offense is explosive enough to keep it with Oregon, whose offense is a lot better.
Yeah, I'm going to echo both of y'all here. I think that it'll be Oregon kind of running away with it. It's a shame that, Utah is going to be down there starting quarterback because this would have been, I thought, a really good game if he was healthy, if Cam Rising was playing. But unfortunately, that is not the case. So with that being said, I'm going to go with the Ducks getting a win this one. Bo Nix has had a great season. Still kind of in that Heisman contention watch, I feel. And he can really have a really good showing here, I think. So give me the Oregon Ducks taking the win in this one. I'll go Oregon 37, and I'll go Utah. I'll go 17. 37-17 final score for me. All right, up next, Duke and Louisville. And no, this is not basketball. Jay McClellan kicked things off. Who's winning this one?
Yeah, although it does sound like a basketball game for sure. You got number 20 Duke. Still can't believe they're actually a ranked team. Versus number 18 Louisville, 5-2 versus 6-1 on this one. We know Duke has played spoiler to Clemson, and they've come close to playing spoiler on a few other times. But I just think this is going to go straight Louisville's way on this one. And when you look at Leonard, he's having I don't know, man. He's under 1,000 yards, 3-2. This is just not a very impressive stat line to really get excited about. Versus Plummer, who's 1,900 yards, 13-8. Again, not a very impressive stat line to give out. So you got one who doesn't really throw for a lot, and you got one who throws a little, but almost throws as many interceptions as he does touchdowns. So they're both very shaky on this air game. So then it kind of comes down to, who's got the better run game, and I think the better run game goes to Jordan at 7.4 yards per carry to Waters 5.9 yards per carry. Even though Water has one more touchdown, I just don't think it's enough when your yards per carry aren't anywhere near 7.4. That's ridiculous. I mean, that is a ridiculous yard per carry. Then you look at the yards for offense. Obviously Duke does have a little bit more there at 371 to 285 of Louisville. And then you look at the defense, and it's almost a squash at right around 315 apiece. So it really kind of comes down to these offenses, and I do think that Louisville's offense is just a little bit more potent than what Duke is going to be able to handle. Duke did put up 76 yards passing against FSU in a touch, so that just kind of tells you they kind of came back down to a little bit of reality for where they really are versus what we see them ranked as. 197 yards rushing on FSU and a touchdown. Duke obviously did not do well there either. Yeah, I think this is going to definitely go. I think Plummer threw, 2 interceptions versus Pitt and had 6 carries for negative 47 yards via 4 sacks. So if I had to say anything, Plummer, for the love of God, learn to throw the ball away. 47 yards on 4 sacks is ridiculous. So I think if Duke could put pressure on Plummer to make those kinds of mistakes, then Duke might actually have a shot in this game. But ultimately, I just think that Louisville's offense is going to be too much for Duke. So therefore, I'm going with Louisville. But I think this is another close game, and I think it's 21-14.
All right. Dustin, who you got winning this one?
You could make a case that this is a matchup between 2 potential Coach of the Year candidates. You have Tim Elko, who was the Texas A&M assistant under Jimbo Fisher for I think 3 or 4 years, comes to Duke, wins 9 games with Duke last year, and now he's got him again sitting at 5-2, number 20 in the country, where I don't think anyone expected Duke to even be in the position they're in this year. You have Jeff Brom leaving Purdue, where he was an average coach at best. Yes, he had Purdue in the Big Ten championship game last year, but the Big Ten West was so terrible that you had 4 losses in that conference you were going to make it in. And now he goes to Louisville, and he's got Louisville looking like the old Bobby Petrino days when Teddy Bridgewater was the quarterback and they had all those weapons in Louisville, and Louisville was a top 10 team. It's just amazing what happens when one coach leaves one program to another, but kind of like we were touching on just with the Utah-Oregon game. This is ultimately going to come down to the battle of the quarterbacks. And right now, without knowing Riley Leonard's health, and if he is 100% and if that ankle is going to be 100% at any point the rest of the year, Duke's offense, which was already somewhat limited, is going to be that much more limited because they don't have Leonard's legs that can make plays. They don't have Leonard's playmaking abilities at 100% right now. They're kind of limited to what they can do offensively. They're kind of limited to what they can do in terms of having their backup come in and try to save things versus Jack Plummer. Yes, he plays kind of with his hair on fire sometimes and makes a lot of stupid decisions, but he's still a more explosive quarterback than what Duke has at this point. And that alone, I think, is going to make a difference. I do think Duke's defense, once again, is going to force a couple turnovers from Plummer, especially on the interception side of things. But offensively, Duke's going to be in trouble if Riley Leonard is not 100%. So I like Louisville in this one, 24-20.
All right. Yeah, guys, great points all in all. I'm going to go with Louisville, giving the Cardinals in this one. Like I said, it's kind of a hit or miss with Plummer. We'll see what he's going to do, how he's going to play, and just the questions around how Riley Leonard is. Is he 100%? Is he only 80%? We really don't know. So we'll see how that happens. But for me, I'm going to go Louisville win this one. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game, close game though. Give me the Cardinals taking this one. Go 24 to Duke 17. And the final game we're going to be talking about here today is Texas and BYU. Dustin, I'll let you talk about this one first.
This game just got a whole lot more interesting with Quinn Ewers out. Obviously, Texas is still the better team, and that's not going to change. But not having a guy in Quinn Ewers who is having one of his best, if not his best season as a starter, is really going to come into play, especially when you have a guy in Keaton Slovis who's nothing special for BYU. They're kind of in a similar spot to Duke where BYU knows the style of play they can play. They're a basically hit you in the face, kind of grind it out type of team. That's who they're going to be, and that's who they're going to stay, versus Texas is a much more explosive team. But now we're just going to see what they look like without their leader under center. I don't think it's going to matter in this one anyways. I still think Texas is going to win pretty handily. I think it's going to be 31-17, but that loss of Ewers for the next couple of weeks is really going to hurt Texas's chances of potentially getting a spot in that Big 12 championship game if they can run the table.
All right. Jay, these are your boys.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. You know, not having Quentin Ewers is a big thing, but at the same time, I kind of want to see Archie Manning get the nod. I don't think he will, but I think what's that other quarterback's name, Dustin, that came in the last game instead? Oh, I can't remember that dude's name for nothing off the top of my head, but you know the one I'm talking about that relieved Ewers.
Yeah, Malik Murphy.
Thank you. I think he's probably going to wind up getting the nod, and I think probably Archie will be the backup. Even though I think this is the perfect time to put Archie. Hey Archie, let's see what you got, baby. And if you don't have it, then we'll go back to Malik. But let's see what we got in Archie, man. He's been there, Let's see what he can do, man. Yeah, not having Ewers there is a critical thing, especially out a couple of weeks. But honestly, I'm looking at their schedule right now, and what do we got? We have OU. We played Houston. We got BYU. Then we got Kansas up until we don't get TCU until the 11th of November. I think we're going to be okay as long as we can win these next two games over Kansas State University and BYU. Then we'll still be on track. But again, I think we got to find out what we got in Archie Manning at this point. You look at Slovis, like you said, a little over 15, 12, and 4. Not a bad stat line, honestly. But I think it comes down to, if you are going to go with Archie, do you go to maybe more of a run game and then throw the ball periodically, maybe on possession downs or whatever the case may be? And if that's the case, we obviously blow them out the doors. Martin's got, I think, 96 at 438, 4 touchdowns, and Brooks is at 128 to 825 yards and 6 touchdowns. We look at the yards per carry, which really to me is what matters the most. 4.6 for Martin, which is not bad, but Brooks is putting up 6.4, which I think that 6.4 is going to come in handy. Like I said, if we're testing out Archie Manning to see what he's got, that 6.4 puts him in much better field position than if he was at 4.6 or less. So on that merit alone, like Stat Guy said, I fully expect Texas to win. I do think it'll be a close game just because, we don't have our number one quarterback out there. We may be going with a surprising all-star freshman or possibly, a more experienced Malik. But we'll see what happens there. So, yeah, I think BYU loses to TCU 44-11. And Kansas at 38-27. I think BYU has kind of shown that they really just don't have a whole lot out there. So I don't think this is going to be too much for Texas to deal with. So by that point, I'm going to go 28-14 in favor of Texas.
All right. I'm also going to go with the Longhorns picking up the win in this one, even with Quinn Ewers being out for seemingly the rest of the year with that shoulder surgery. That's a really rough one there. But I think they're going to rock with Malik Murphy in this one only because, like you said, I feel like, Jay, if y'all were maybe not as highly ranked, they might throw him out there. But y'all can't lose any games. You know what I mean? Y'all got to keep the momentum rolling. So that's why I think personally they'll go with Murphy just because he is more experienced, obviously, in college football. But I don't see this really being a huge challenge all in all. I think Texas – just has the better squad, top to bottom on all sides. BYU, I think they'll put up a good fight. I hope they do, but I just think Texas has too much talent. So give me the Longhorns 38 and give me BYU. I'll go 13. So big one for Texas, and Jay's happy all around. All right, guys, that is the end of our show. Appreciate you, Dustin and Jay, coming on talking some college football predictions for Week 9. I want to hear what you have to say, our fans, in the comments. Who's going to win these games? Once again, do a quick little recap here. Texas, BYU, Duke, Louisville, Oregon, Utah, Georgia, Florida, and Oklahoma, Kansas. Want to hear who you have winning these games. Final scores in our comments. Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, anywhere you want to follow us, you can find us. And once again, we appreciate you just tuning in. And we'll see you again on another